In a luxury department store, there was a quiet tension that caught everyone's attention. A man, who looked like an ordinary person, walked in and began to walk among the expensive clothes. A rich young man called out sarcastically, "What are you doing here? This place is not for poor and destitute people like you. Get out of here." But that young man did not know that he had made the mistake of his life and would learn the biggest lesson of his life. Because the person in front of him was Keanu Reeves. This man, who surprised everyone with his silence, would shock everyone in the store in a few minutes and give the young man the lesson of his life. And he would not forget this lesson for the rest of his life. What is true wealth? Should you think twice before judging people? The answer to these questions is hidden in our story. Hey, you! You're listening to this story right now, and you're obviously enjoying it. But I realized you haven't subscribed yet. That makes me sad. Come on, leave a like and subscribe, and let's bring Keanu Reeves' life lessons to millions. Because this story is for you. Now, let's get to the story. The Beverly Center, one of the most famous and expensive malls in Los Angeles, was basking in the afternoon sunlight, filtering through its massive storefront windows, making it feel like one of the most peaceful and luxurious places on earth. The windows displayed sparkling clothes and accessories, and the carefully designed displays captivated every visitor. People didn't just come here to shop. They came to flaunt their status, to feel like they were on a stage. It was a fashion runway, a social hotspot, and one of the coolest spots in the world. Brandon, standing off in a corner of the mall, in front of a big department store, was a part of this spectacle. He'd always considered himself on top of the world, never hesitating to belittle anyone who couldn't keep up with him. And today, with two of his friends by his side, he was scanning the place as if he had something to prove. His outfit spoke volumes about his wealth and taste. A designer leather jacket, a limited edition watch with gold details, and a pair of shoes few could afford. For Brandon, these weren't just clothes. They were a symbol of power. "You've got to know how to enjoy this place," Brandon said, flashing a slight smile at his friends. "But of course, not everyone can be here. First, you need a high credit card limit." His friends laughed along with him. Brandon was still watching the entrance to the store when something caught his eye. A man walked in, looking completely different from the typical shoppers. Keanu Reeves entered wearing a plaid shirt, old jeans, and a worn-out backpack. His outfit was in no way aligned with the luxurious atmosphere of the Beverly Center. But Keanu moved through the store calmly, completely unaware of the glitzy surroundings, as if he belonged there. Brandon narrowed his eyes and sized him up. "Look at this filthy pauper," he said sarcastically. "I think he's in the wrong place. Maybe he confused this for a homeless shelter, huh?" One of his friends couldn't hold back a laugh. "Maybe he just wants to check the prices and sigh. Or maybe he's here to steal the whole store," he joked. Brandon continued, clearly enjoying the moment. "Exactly. Let's see what happens. Maybe he'll see the price tags and run for the exit, or maybe he'll faint from shock and we'll get a good laugh out of it." Keanu didn't seem to notice them at all. Or maybe he did, but he couldn't have cared less. His attention was locked on the clothes inside the store, and he walked on with confidence. The luxury of the store didn't seem to faze him one bit. Brandon seemed frustrated and irritated by how calm Keanu appeared. Homeless people look like they've been kicked out of their homes. "Look at him. Look where he came from. He's pathetic," he sneered. "Seriously, what's he even doing here? Maybe he's looking for someone to beg from." One of his friends shrugged nonchalantly. "Who knows? Maybe he just wants to make a fool of himself." At that moment, a store employee turned toward Keanu. Olivia, the store's young and talented sales representative, walked over to him with a professional smile. But for a brief moment, her gaze flicked to his clothes, her thoughts momentarily betraying her composure. She quickly masked her judgment and asked politely, "How can I help you, sir?" Keanu gave a slight smile. "I'm looking for a suit," he said. "Something simple, but of good quality." Olivia was taken aback for just a second, but quickly regained her professionalism. "Sure, I'll show you a few options right away," she said, leading him toward the suit section. Brandon, who was watching all of this unfold, could hardly believe his eyes. He raised an eyebrow and turned to his friends. "Is this guy for real? Is he seriously going to buy a suit? Let's stick around and see how this plays out," he said. His friends snickered and followed him, still mocking Keanu. What they didn't know was that the lesson about to unfold would leave an indelible mark on all of them, one they'd never forget. As Keanu Reeves made his way to the suit section of the store, guided by Olivia, Brandon and his friends watched them with sarcastic expressions. Brandon wore his usual superior smile, clearly amused by the situation. He turned to his friends and whispered, "He really thinks he can get something? What a loser. Just wait. This is going to be a show for fools." When Keanu arrived at the suits area, Olivia accompanied him with professionalism. Since the store was a boutique offering only the most luxurious and expensive items, everything was carefully organized. Every suit on the racks was a symbol of sophistication, from the meticulous stitching to the high-quality fabric. Olivia gestured to the nearest rack with one hand. "These designs are from our most popular collection. The fabrics are imported from Italy and are all handcrafted," she explained. Then she added, "Which style do you prefer? Something for a formal event or a more casual elegance?" Keanu studied the suits closely. Slowly, he picked one up and ran his fingers over the fabric. "It should be something simple but impressive. No frills, just quality," he said. Olivia paused for a moment, surprised by his words. Keanu's calm yet confident demeanor caught her off guard. Normally, she was used to seeing customers dressed plainly, often hesitant and insecure about their choices. But this man was different. There was a look in his eyes that suggested he didn't need anything here, and yet he knew exactly what he was searching for. Meanwhile, Brandon stood in the corner with his friends, watching Keanu with growing annoyance. Keanu's calm demeanor was starting to wear on his patience. "I can't believe this," Brandon muttered. "Let's have some fun." He walked over to the suit section. As Keanu was discussing the suit with Olivia, Brandon interrupted, stepping forward with a sarcastic tone. "Hey man," he said, "do you even know how much that suit costs, or are you just touching it and daydreaming?" Keanu turned to look at Brandon. There was no anger or surprise on his face, just his usual calm expression. "Yes, I know," he answered briefly. Then he turned back to Olivia. "I want to try this on." Brandon, unsatisfied with the answer, pushed further. "Really, the price of clothes here can be a bit, well, high for someone like you. Maybe you should check the price tags," he said with a mocking laugh. Keanu completely ignored Brandon's comment. He smiled slightly at Olivia and pointed toward the fitting room. "Where can I try it on?" he asked. Olivia, trying to disregard Brandon's sarcasm, led Keanu toward the fitting room. Her face, however, clearly showed her frustration with Brandon's behavior. There was a brief silence in the store as Keanu entered the booth. Brandon and his friends waited eagerly outside. When he realizes this is a joke, he won't even want to leave the fitting room, Brandon whispered, laughing. Or he'll refuse to try it on altogether. Olivia, meanwhile, turned toward Brandon. She bowed her head slightly, maintaining professionalism. "Sir, I must ask you to treat our customers with respect," she said firmly. everyone here receives equal service." Brandon laughed as though Olivia's warning was a joke. "Of course," he said sarcastically. "But we all know some people come here to look, not to buy." Olivia's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She simply waited for Keanu to come out of the fitting room. A moment later, the door to the fitting room opened. Keanu stepped out, dressed in the suit. The cut of the suit fit him perfectly. The elegance of the fabric, combined with Keanu's confident posture, gave the impression of a movie scene. Brandon and his friends froze when they saw Keanu in the suit. Their smug smiles were replaced by expressions of surprise. Keanu turned toward Olivia and spoke calmly. "Just what I was looking for. I'll take this suit," he said. Then he added, "I also want to pick out some shirts and ties." Brandon stood stunned. "He must be joking," he muttered under his breath. His friends exchanged bewildered looks. Brandon took a step forward, trying to regain his composure. "You know, the clothes here aren't cheap," he said in a sarcastic tone. "Let me give you a hint. That suit is probably more expensive than the clothes you're wearing right now." Ignoring Brandon's words, Keanu turned to Olivia. "Please, calculate the total price," he requested. Olivia immediately moved to complete the transaction, but the tension in the store was palpable. Brandon's smile had completely vanished. His friends waited in stunned silence to see what would happen next. Inside the store, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Brandon and his friends stared in disbelief as Keanu made his way toward the checkout. Just moments before, they had mocked him, but now he was about to buy the most expensive suit in the store. "What does this guy think he's doing?" Brandon thought. As Keanu Reeves walked calmly behind Olivia to the checkout, the other customers in the store couldn't help but watch. Though no one made it obvious, it was clear that everyone was eager to see how this would play out. They were all waiting for him to be caught in a lie. Olivia placed the suit Keanu had chosen, along with the shirts and ties, on the counter. As she scanned the items, she could sense Brandon's nervousness, but she was also impressed by how calm and collected Keanu was. "The total is $150,000, Olivia said as she handed Keanu the receipt. Her voice remained professional, but there was a hint of curiosity. Could this man actually afford such an amount? Or was he just playing everyone? Brandon stood just behind the register, holding his breath. A smug smile played on his lips, but it quickly gave way to a mix of confusion, curiosity, and a touch of apprehension. "Come on," he whispered to himself. "Show yourself. Let's see how this game ends." Keanu, undeterred by the tension, simply nodded. He slowly pulled a plain black credit card from his wallet and handed it to Olivia. Brandon couldn't hold back his laughter. "What? Maybe the card's fake, or it has no limit," he thought. He leaned toward his friends and whispered, "Just wait. I want to see your faces when the POS machine rejects his card." The room went silent as Olivia took the card and inserted it into the POS machine. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the machine, anticipating what would happen next. The sound of the machine beeped, followed by a message that appeared on the screen. "Confirmed," Olivia said, a bit louder this time. "Confirmed." Keanu smiled slightly, took the card back and slid it into his pocket. "Thank you," he said to Olivia. His voice was as calm and confident as it had been since the moment he walked in. Brandon's smile faltered, replaced by disbelief. "No," he muttered to himself. "This can't be happening. Did he really just pay for all of that?" One of his friends leaned over and whispered, "Dude, I think you lost. He actually paid." Brandon stood there for a moment, unable to speak. For the first time, he felt truly humiliated. He had always prided himself on being able to belittle people, to assert his power over those he mocked. But now, he was the one who had been put in his place. Keanu paused briefly at the checkout counter as he prepared to gather his things. Turning to Olivia, he thanked her with a small smile. "You provided excellent service," he said. "I really enjoyed working with you." Olivia smiled warmly at his words. "Thank you, sir. We hope to see you again soon." Keanu briefly glanced at Brandon before picking up his things and walking toward the door. There was no trace of mockery or anger in his expression, just a calm and meaningful look. "You know what?" Keanu said, turning back toward Brandon. "Appearances don't always reflect the truth. Before you judge people, you should take a moment to really get to know who you're talking to." Brandon had no response. He looked away from Keanu, lowering his head and listening in silence. For the first time, he couldn't muster a sarcastic remark or a clever comeback. He knew Keanu was right. Keanu picked up his items and made his way to the door. "Have a good day," he said one last time before leaving the store. As Keanu walked out, Brandon took a deep breath and shook his head in disbelief. How is this possible? He thought to himself. One of his friends, still with a grin, nudged Brandon. "Hey, Brandon, did you see that? He's got more class than you." Brandon's face reddened with embarrassment, but it wasn't just the teasing from his friends. He was beginning to feel the weight of his own actions. The reality of his mistake was setting in. After a few moments of silence, Brandon caught Olivia's gaze. She was looking at him, her expression stern but understanding. "Brandon," she said calmly, "I don't know if you learned anything today, but I hope this serves as a lesson for you." Brandon turned to Olivia, but no words came out. For the first time, he couldn't come up with a sarcastic remark or a witty comeback. Olivia was right. Brandon stood at the store window, watching Keanu Reeves disappear into the distance. An unfamiliar feeling washed over him, something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger or greed. It was shame. But not the kind of shame he was used to. It felt deeper, like something had broken inside him, and he knew it was his fault. His friends were still laughing, brushing it off as a funny story. Jack clapped him on the shoulder. "Forget about it, man. Who knew? We were supposed to think Keanu Reeves was actually going shopping." Another friend chimed in. "Yeah, he may be famous, but your money is cooler than his." Brandon didn't respond. Normally, he would have joined in, laughing along with them, but this time he felt nothing but indifference. For his friends, the story was over. But for Brandon, something had just begun. He shook his head, took a deep breath, and stood up. "I'm going to get some air," he said, his voice softer and more distant than usual. His friends exchanged surprised glances. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Where are you going?" Brandon hesitated. He didn't know exactly where he was headed, but he knew he had to get out. "I don't know," he muttered, "but I need to do something." His friends called after him, half joking. "Come on, Brandon, let it go. He's famous. So what?" But Brandon didn't listen. He pushed the door open and stepped into the cold air, letting it hit his face. It felt refreshing, like it was clearing his mind. He needed to think. Walking aimlessly, he found himself questioning everything: his wealth, his life. What really mattered? The money, the clothes, the luxury cars? Or was it how he treated people? How he saw them? How he respected them? After a few moments of walking, something clicked. He made up his mind. He had to go back to the store. Today, he had to face the reality he had been avoiding for years. When Brandon returned to the store, Olivia was still behind the register. She raised an eyebrow when she saw him. "I figured you'd be back." Brandon took a deep breath, glanced around the shelves, and then approached her. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia crossed her arms and smiled slightly. "Ask away." Brandon thought for a few seconds, then asked the question that had been on his mind for so long. "Do you think people can really change?" Olivia tilted her head, studying him carefully. "Someone who doesn't want to change won't. But for someone who truly wants to, anything is possible." Brandon nodded thoughtfully. Her answer had sparked something inside him. "Then I'll do something," he said decisively. He pulled his wallet from his pocket and approached the cash register. "Can you make me a gift card for $1,000? Olivia looked at him with wide eyes. "Who is this for?" Brandon bowed his head slightly. "For someone who really needs it, but don't mention my name." Olivia paused for a few seconds, her expression softening into a smile. "Maybe you really are changing." Brandon took a deep breath. "This is the first time I've ever done something like this." As he walked out of the store, Brandon's eyes focused on the wide windows of the Beverly Center. Today had been a turning point in his life. He pulled out his phone and found an old number. It belonged to a classmate he had once despised and made fun of in high school. He hesitated, took a deep breath, and pressed the call button. After a few rings, the voice on the other end answered. "Hello?" Brandon closed his eyes, preparing himself to speak sincerely for the first time. "Hey, it's Brandon. I don't know if you remember, but I'm really sorry for what I did to you years ago." There was a short silence on the other end, followed by a laugh. "Wow, Brandon, that was something I didn't expect. But your apology is accepted." Brandon smiled slightly. He had taken his first step. True success isn't how we look on the outside, but how we treat others. It's easy to underestimate people, but the real challenge is learning respect and humility. Keanu Reeves's quiet yet strong demeanor had taught us all a lesson, not just one rich young man. As Brandon thought about what it meant to be rich, just standing there and looking at expensive clothes in a store, he realized that true wealth was not in his wallet, but in his heart. If you liked this story, be sure to follow for more life-changing stories. Real change begins with a small realization.